Hi, I'm Lyn Fernie, and I help women to eat, move, and sleep so they can balance their hormones, lose weight, and get their body, mind, and life back. So many women come to me and they're really struggling to lose weight. They're suffering from all sorts of symptoms, and they're often in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And these women say to me, the diets that I've used in the past are not working for me anymore. Now, they might have eaten low fat, they might have eaten low carb, but whatever they've been doing is suddenly not working anymore. They say to me, I've tried all of the popular diets like keto and it's just not working, but all of my friends have lost weight, but I'm not losing weight. Or many people say, my husband lost weight, my partner lost weight, we did it together, he lost 10 kilos or 15 pounds, but I can't lose anything. In fact, I've gained weight. I tried keto and then I went to carnivore and it got worse. I put on weight, my belly is bloated and it hurts. I don't understand what's happening. Other women will say to me, I really try to eat healthy and yeah, I'm just addicted to sugar. I know it's not good for me. I've tried to give it up, but sugar and carbohydrates, I'm just constantly craving them. And every time I go to the pantry or the fridge, I just can't help myself. Women in lockdown, they're really struggling because there's all of the food around them, especially when they've got food there for the family. And again, they say to me, Lyn, I just can't avoid the temptation. Then there's other women who say, I've been exercising, and we've all come across it, right? We've been exercising and exercising. I've been doing more and more. I was doing an hour a day, and now I'm doing 2 hours a day, but I'm still not losing weight. They're on the treadmill, they're on the cross trainer, they may be stuck at home, but they've still got exercise equipment, or they're out running and they're doing more and more and more cardio, more and more HIIT, but nothing's working. And again, it's the same story as the diet. Exercise has worked all my life, I've been an exerciser, but nothing's working for me anymore. I just don't understand it. I can't fit any more exercise into my day, and yet I'm not seeing the scales move at all. They're not dropping. And again, in fact, I'm putting on weight and I really don't understand it. A lot of women are stressed, especially right now, with everything that's happening with COVID-19, that global pandemic, with all of the issues that we're facing in our society. Women are stressed. They're at home, they may be having to work from home, they may be in lockdown, they may be fearful of what's happening to family and friends. They're dealing with what's happening on the news and out in the media. They're bombarded by it and they're stressed. Their anxiety is going up. Some of them are depressed. And they say to me again, I'm not normally anxious, I'm not a depressive sort of person, but yet every day it seems to get worse. These women are struggling with energy. So many women struggle with energy. They tell me, I don't just snooze the alarm 2 or 3 times, I snooze it 5 or 10 times, and then I really struggle to get out of bed. I have to drag myself out of bed. I just don't want to get up. And yet they've gone to bed early. They've tried to sleep, but they just can't sleep. They can't get to sleep. They can't stay asleep. So many women tell me, I wake at 2 o'clock every night, or I wake at 3 o'clock every single night. It doesn't matter what I do. I can eat early, I can eat late, I can go to bed early. Nothing works. I can't get a good night's sleep and I'm just exhausted all day, every single day. And then they tell me their relationships are suffering because they're irritable, they're tired, they're irritable, they're moody, they snap at their partner, they don't want to. In fact, some of them tell me, Lyn, I don't want to be around my partner anymore, I can't stand him. And it's not because they've fallen out of love, it's not because they have found somebody else. They're just struggling to be with another human being. And even the once very sociable people are saying, I just don't want to interact anymore. I don't want to see people. I'm just so moody and irritable all the time. Some of them say to me, I'm like Jekyll and Hyde. 2 weeks a month, I'm full of energy, I'm productive, I can get so much done. And then 2 weeks a month, it's like I've been hit by a bus. I struggle every day, I drag myself through the day, I'm not productive at all, I'm irritable, I'm moody, and I'm just not a pleasant person to be around. Other women tell me that their PMS symptoms are getting worse and worse all the time. And it doesn't matter what they do, what supplements they take, how they eat, how they exercise, nothing's helping. They're following all of the conventional advice and yet nothing's working. These women are often having irregular cycles. Their periods have become a little bit crazy. Either they're not coming or they're coming all the time. And even worse, and sorry guys, put your hands over your ears, but for the women out there, you know what I'm talking about, the crime scene period. It's like you get out of bed and there's a trail behind you and you just can't stop the flow, and it goes on for days and days and days. Maybe there's clots, maybe there's all sorts of things that nobody wants to hear about, nobody wants to talk about. Even more women tell me that they go to see their medical professional, their GP, their doctor, and they're perplexed. They have blood tests run and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with them according to the blood tests. But yet they find fibroids. Maybe they get diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. Some of them, they do get things like high estrogen coming back on the blood tests, but the doctors just don't know what's wrong. And then there are others where there's seemingly nothing wrong on the surface. So the doctor sends them away with antidepressants, sleeping pills, tells them to see a psychiatrist. So many women are told to see a psychiatrist, but they don't need to see a psychiatrist. Many women tell me in this phase of their life, especially their 40s, 50s and 60s, that they just don't feel like themselves anymore. They don't know themselves. They don't recognise themselves. Does any of that sound like you? Well, believe me, I know exactly what that feels like because I've been there. I've been through it. I've probably had all of those symptoms on the list. For years, I followed conventional diet guidelines. So if I go way back, I'll tell you a bit about my story and how I got to this point in time and why women talk to me about these problems that they're having. And I'll tell you what my findings have been, what my research tells me, and what the solutions are. But first, my story. Well, going back a long way, my daddy died of a heart attack when he was 50 years old and I was 8. My mum ended up in a care home for 11 years with dementia after she suffered from horrendous weight gain and lots of hormonal symptoms. And so I was conditioned to believe that I needed to eat a low-fat diet because I was at risk of heart disease. I believed I had to eat low salt, and I had to follow all of that conventional diet advice that's around. And the conventional diet advice has always told us, fear the fat. Saturated fat is bad for you. Animal fat is bad for you. Salt is bad for you. And so over the years, I ate less and less and less fat. I would take a little bit of olive oil, but I wouldn't have animal fat. And in fact, my diet became quite extreme over the years. I started to reduce the amount of red meat that I ate. And then I went from eating red meat to only having chicken and fish. And then I went to only having fish. And then eventually I stopped eating all meats, all fish, and I went fully vegetarian. Vegetarian, raw food, low fat. And I did that for many years, and I truly believed I was doing the right thing for my health. Now, at the same time, I was watching my cholesterol, I was watching my weight. I was always very slim. I'd been a competitive athlete and a competitive gymnast, so I loved exercise. The more extreme, the better. And so I went from athletics and gymnastics into sports like marathon and triathlon, Ironman and CrossFit. Whatever there was going, I did it. Skiing, water skiing. I was super active and I loved to move my body. And so I've been a gym bunny over the years. I've done all of the different fitness activities that you can find. And many of them I would do 2 or 3 hours a day, quite happily 6 days a week. So I exercised hard and I ate a low-fat diet. And I thought I was following, and I was following, all of the advice that we've been given since the 60s. And as time went on, in parallel, I was building my career. Now, I was an engineer at the time, so I went through all of the rungs on the career ladder and I built up through the ranks, became a manager, a senior leader, a director, and I ended up running very large consulting teams right the way across the world. So I had a phenomenal career, I had an amazing career. I'm extremely lucky. I had fabulous people in every country and I loved what I did. I really enjoyed my work day in, day out, and I was a workaholic. So I would burn the candle at both ends. I'd get up early, I'd get to the office, I'd work all day, I'd work through into the evening, and then I'd keep going. I'd keep going right through till 10, 11, 12 at night. I'd snatch a couple of hours sleep and then I'd do it all again, and I'd do that 7 days a week. And I did that for many, many years. And as a result, I did have a very successful career, a well-paid job, a responsible position. There was a lot of demands placed on my time. And I thought I was like Margaret Thatcher. She was one of my role models. I lived in the UK in my early career and, she had the badge of honour for being able to run the country and pull the country through all sorts of struggles. And she did it on only a few hours sleep. And so that's what I did. And I said, I don't need sleep. I'll sleep when I'm dead. So I ate low fat, I exercised hard, I was a workaholic and I didn't sleep a lot. I never took vacations or holidays and I just kept driving myself. And then one day, when I was 37, everything came tumbling down. I suddenly couldn't cope with it anymore. I felt terrible. My digestion was causing me problems. I had chronic fatigue. I couldn't get out of bed on a morning. I used to literally get up, I'd go to the bathroom, and then I'd lie down on the bathroom floor and try and have a quick sleep. I was so exhausted. I would really struggle to get through my day. I became moody and irritable. I started to put on a little bit of weight. I became very anxious and stressy. I couldn't remember things. And at 37, you don't expect your memory to start to go. And so I started to get really concerned about dementia. Was I going to suffer the same fate as my mum? She'd had 11 years where dementia robbed her of her personality, of everything, and of her mind and of her body. So I really worried about that and I went to see countless specialists. I was also having lots of problems with my periods. Now I was on the contraceptive pill and I'd had very regular periods as a result. In fact, I would run my pills together so I didn't even need to have a period. And so I could, ignore that whole women's issue. And I could go and do my corporate job and I could go and do my exercise and my competitions and my triathlons and marathons and never have to worry about periods and symptoms. But then I started to get these really extreme PMS symptoms. And again, I went to see specialists. I had blood tests done and nobody could tell me what was wrong with me. I saw so many specialists in the UK. Then I moved to the Netherlands and again, I went to see every specialist I could find. I saw naturopaths, I saw chiropractors, I saw GPs, I saw gynecologists. Nobody could tell me what was wrong with me. And this continued and it got worse and worse. I moved to Australia. I was in my early 40s and the depression and anxiety and stress was getting worse. And what people didn't know at the time was that not only was I suffering all of those symptoms, but I had a dirty little secret. And my dirty little secret was that I was a sugar addict and a binge eater. So I was vegetarian, low fat during the day. I ate healthy. Everybody thought I was super healthy. But at night, the sugar cravings were killing. And I would go to the supermarket on the way home every single night and I would gorge myself. I would binge on sugar, on ice cream, on cakes, on pastries, on lollies, on candies, on sweets, on anything I could get my hands on. And I binged every night. It was kind of like my stress relief. It never felt better, but I did it anyway. I'd start every day healthy, and then by 5 o'clock, I was in the sweetie aisle, the nuts, the chocolate, the cakes, the pastries, and I was having as much as I possibly could. And this went on for years and years. I was a sugar addict and binge eater for 25 years in total. And one day I said to myself, this isn't right. Nobody understood what was happening. By then I'd been diagnosed as having celiac disease, early menopause, and autoimmune conditions. And anybody who's suffered any of those understands how bad they are individually. To have them all together and for it to get worse and worse is quite frankly horrendous. And there feels like there's just no end to it. No matter what you do, no matter what supplements you try, what diets you try, what exercise you try, nothing works. And then all of a sudden I found the ketogenic diet. And I tried the keto diet, and remember, I'd eaten low fat for years. And all of a sudden, things improved. And I became a fan. The keto diet is what helped me kick my sugar addiction. It helped me get rid of the cravings, and I thought I'd found my solution. I ate keto for a long time. And it did, it worked, it brought my periods back. It took a long time. It took 3 years before my periods really came back properly. But they did, they came back. A lot of my symptoms resolved. The celiac disease went away like some miracle. I could exercise again, and I didn't have to exercise as much. I could do CrossFit, I had energy, I could get out of bed. And it really felt like things were getting better. And I had quite a few really, really good years on the ketogenic diet. I loved it. I really enjoyed the way of eating. I even brought meat back. I'd already done a lot of nutritional research, and so I started to research the ketogenic diet, its origins, its beginnings, why it worked, how it was beneficial for cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, how it was beneficial for conditions like dementia, like my mum had, Alzheimer's. And I became an advocate. And so the keto diet really was my saviour for a long, long time. And I even went beyond the keto diet and I tried carnivore, and I enjoyed the carnivore diet for another, probably a year. And again, I really enjoyed it. I got super lean. I was very, very toned. I was able to lift really heavy in the gym. But then a lot of my symptoms started to return. I got the PMS back, the moodiness back, the irritability, some of the anger, the anxiousness, not sleeping. And some of the worst things were the bloating and the digestion problems. The digestion was horrendous. I couldn't digest fats anymore. I struggled with my meals. I used to do intermittent fasting, and it was great when I was fasting, but as soon as I ate, my tummy was painful. I had this big, bloated, uncomfortable belly. And again, it got worse. The symptoms got worse day on day, week on week. New symptoms appearing, allergies, hay fever, itchy eyes, itchy nose, tingling teeth, hot flashes, night sweats. My joints would hurt. My joints would get crunchy. Things like bunions started to appear. It felt like I was falling apart. I was in my mid-40s and it felt like I was 90. Again, I started to struggle to get out of bed. And I couldn't understand at first what was happening. And so I started to dive into the research. And what I found, to be honest, it really shocked me. What I found is that all of our diet advice, all of our information on how we should eat, move and sleep was designed for men. And you might say, come on, Lyn, that's a bit reactionary. But go and have a look for yourself. What happened in the 70s is most of us know about the thalidomide trial, where many babies, hundreds of babies, thousands of babies were born with horrendous deformities. And there was a realization that there was a risk of doing research on women. Now that was a pharmaceutical drug, but still there was a new set of guidelines that came about, and they said we can't do research on women. There's just too much risk. And so women were excluded from all of the research on pharmaceutical products, vitamins and supplements, diets and exercise for around 20 years. Can you believe it? 20 years. And even when this started to include women in research projects, do you know, they only included postmenopausal women. And then again, when they wanted to go further and understand the effects of diets and exercise and drugs on younger women, they would only accept women in the first half of their cycle because there was no risk of them being pregnant. Once a woman has ovulated, then she could be pregnant. So they removed the risk of a thalidomide type of outcome by removing those women. So what it means is that 95% of our diet and exercise advice is actually based on men. And I hear you say, well, what's wrong with that? There's something very fundamentally wrong with that. And that is that men have got a 24-hour cycle. Men's hormones go in a 24-hour pattern. They get up, testosterone and cortisol rise on a morning. That's why a lot of men want sex first thing in the morning, because their testosterone is at a peak. They power through their day. They've got lots of energy in the morning especially. They start to lose their energy a bit on an afternoon, and then their testosterone is at an all-time low. Their cortisol is at an all-time low on an afternoon and an evening, and they just enjoy curling up on the couch and watching the movies. And then they get up the next day, and the same thing happens. Cortisol has risen, testosterone has risen, and they're ready for the next day. And that happens day in, day out for men. Now, women are very different. We have a 24-hour cycle as well. Our cortisol peaks on a morning, and that's what gets us up out of bed. But we have 4 distinct phases in a 28-day cycle, or somewhere around a 28-day cycle. And if we simply do the same things every day, day in, day out, if we place stress on our body by the way that we eat, the way that we move, where we over-exercise, the way that we run our life, so all of the demands that are put on us in the workplace, in the home, going to the gym, all of the pressure that we put on ourselves to perform and juggle and multitask, when we don't take time out to relax and chill out, and when we don't get enough sleep, all of that stress, that metabolic stress on the body, the physical stress, the emotional stress, it affects our hormones. So what happens for a woman then is that we don't produce the hormones when we need to. And when we don't produce the hormones that we need to, we start to get symptoms. We put on weight. We get the bloating around the belly. We get digestive problems. We get skin problems. We get acne. Our hair starts to fall out. Our nails break. We get joint pain and joint problems. We get muscle wasting and skin sagging. We get all sorts of problems. We end up with fertility issues. We end up with PMS symptoms. We get heavy periods or no periods. Our cycles go out of whack. And the more our hormones get misaligned, the worse it gets. It's like a vicious circle. Once the hormones go out of balance and we try and do all the things to get ourselves back, So we eat even stricter. We go on a really strict low carb or zero carb ketogenic or carnivore diet. We start to do extra exercise because we're gaining weight. We try and cope with all the demands of life. We're on social media, we're bombarded by all of the news. We don't take the time to chill out. The more we do that, the worse it gets. And we get down to this point where we're at rock bottom and we almost don't want to go on. And that's where I was. So I hear you say, well, what's the solution? Okay, we've got a cycle. We've probably got our hormones out of whack. How on earth do we get out of it? Well, the solution's actually really quite simple. It may not be easy to implement, but it's very simple. And what I've done is, through all of the research that I've put together, I've developed a 5-step program. And the 5 steps go like this. The first one is to eat for your hormones. So as a woman, throughout the month, throughout the 28-day cycle that we have, it's really important to give ourselves the food that our body needs. So at the beginning of our cycle, so after menstruation, we go into the first phase of the cycle called the follicular phase. And in that phase, that's where we really want to be keeping our blood sugar low. We want to be managing our insulin, making sure we don't get insulin resistant. So that's where it's absolutely perfect. It's the perfect time to do something like the ketogenic diet. A nice moderate carb, moderate protein, moderate protein, moderate fat, but low carb approach that regulates our blood sugar. Now what that allows us to do is keep the insulin down, drop some pounds, drop some kilos, and we're basically more like a man than at any other point in our cycle. So we can follow the same sort of advice that men can follow at that point. And that might last for 7 to 10 days. And then we get to a point where we're coming up to ovulation. So what should happen is our estrogen should be rising, our luteinizing hormone should be rising. So there what we want to do is give our body a little bit of healthy carbohydrate, and that will just spike insulin and it will help those hormones get produced. We can also support our body even further with some estrogen building foods. So for a couple of days before ovulation, we want to feed our body the right sort of nutrients so that we get the hormones produced and we ovulate. Now we then go into a phase where again we can do a bit more of that ketogenic low carb approach to keep the blood sugar regulated. We can do that for probably another week. And then as we come to the last week of our cycle, this is where if we haven't fertilized an egg, so once we've ovulated, if that egg hasn't been fertilized, then it becomes the corpus luteum and we produce progesterone. Now this is where we want to support our body because progesterone is this little delicate hormone that needs a lot of love. And this is where having some really nice healthy carbohydrates, and by healthy carbohydrates I don't mean sugar, I don't mean refined food, I don't mean processed food, I mean things like sweet potatoes, squash, pumpkins. If we give ourselves some really nice low glycemic index carbohydrates, that just supports our body and helps our body to build the progesterone that it needs. And if we do that, then we should easily handle any of the PMS symptoms that come up. In fact, we shouldn't even get PMS symptoms, and we should easily move into our period right at the end of the month. So that's the first thing to do, is to eat for the hormones. So get rid of the sugar, get rid of the refined carbohydrates, and sync our foods with our cycle. So once we're doing that, and that can be a game changer for women, that literally in itself, if you do nothing else, that can completely change your life. That can remove the anxiety, the depression. It can deal with that bloated belly, that sore belly that really hurts when you eat. It can deal with a lot of those digestive problems, the foggy brain, the memory problems, the sleep. The next thing to do is to move for our body. and move for our hormones. So again, if we can synchronize our movement patterns so that we're lifting weights at the right time of the month, we're doing cardio at the right time of the month. If we want to do HIIT, high intensity interval type training, again, we're doing it at the right time of the month. And at certain times of the month, perhaps we're only doing yoga, Pilates and walking. If we can get those at the right time of the month, we're going to boost our hormone production, not suppress it. And again, we're going to remove all of that extra stress on our body and allow the hormones to be produced in the right amounts. So we're now eating with our cycle, we're moving with our cycle, we want to sleep well. And again, if we're eating and moving correctly, our sleep patterns should be much better than they were in the past. The last two things are we want to be able to manage our stress. So I've already talked about the metabolic stress on the body, but stress comes in so many forms. Work demands, family demands, all of the things that we as women have to do every single day. If we can manage our time effectively so that at our most productive times of the month, which is usually the first half of the month, we're doing those things that really require a lot of brain power and require us to push a little bit harder. And then maybe at other times of the month, we may be more creative. And other times of the month, we maybe just need a little bit more rest. So again, if we can manage our stress and synchronize our work patterns to our cycle, which can be quite hard for some people, especially if you work shifts, especially if you have a set roster. But there are still things that everybody can do and it's worth it. And then finally, once you've done that, the last one is detox. And we hear detox all the time, but we've got some really major detox pathways in our body. Basically, our gut needs to be in good condition. So by eating right and solving our gut problems, then our gut can basically absorb what it needs to from food and pass waste materials into the bowel. We then need to make sure our liver is working correctly as well, so it can absorb waste products like the waste hormones from our blood and stop them being recirculated. And then finally, our bowels. We need to be able to eliminate all of the waste products, whether that's from food or from hormones. So if we keep those detox pathways clear, and again, a lot of that comes back to how we eat, then we can rid ourselves of the things that are not needed in the body. So when we eat, when we move, when we sleep, when we de-stress and we detox for our hormones, we can lose weight effortlessly as women. We can get our body back. We can look amazing, and our life, work and relationships back. So to help women do all of that, I put together my signature program, which is called Nourish. So if you'd like to find out more about how you eat, move, sleep, detox and de-stress for your hormones, then come and find me on Facebook. I'm at lyn.fernie, lyn.fernie, Lyn.Fernie on Facebook and Instagram. And I've got a free Facebook group which you're more than welcome to join. It's called Eat for Your Hormones. And there I go through those first steps of how exactly to eat. There's free downloadable eating plans everybody can get a hold of, no matter what phase of your life you're in. If you're a woman who is cycling regularly, if you're a woman who's not cycling regularly, if you're on contraception, if you've had a hysterectomy, if you are in perimenopause or menopause or even postmenopausal, there is an eating plan for you. So come into my Facebook group, Eat for Your Hormones, get an eating plan and get started. And if you'd like more information on how to work with me in a deeper way, I do one-on-one coaching and I run that online program called Nourish a few times a year. And I would love to talk to you about how you can balance your hormones, lose weight, get your body, mind and life back, and just supercharge your day every day. Much love.